Hello, Scorpio. If you've landed here, it's probably not by accident. And if you're the kind of Scorpio who believes you're in full control of your emotional life, who thinks no one can ever truly read you, then what you're about to hear might be the most uncomfortable truth you've encountered in a very long time. You've spent years mastering the art of concealment. You've perfected the balance between distance and closeness. You let people think they know you while never really giving them access to the locked chambers of your soul. You've built walls so intricate and high. Even you forgot what they were protecting. Behind your eyes are archives, rooms full of pain you've never spoken, desires you've never admitted, and fears you've never named. You wear your depth like armor. You wield silence like a weapon. And somewhere along the way, you convinced yourself that being impenetrable is the same as being safe. But the universe has grown tired of your hiding. There's someone approaching your life, someone whose presence will rattle the very foundation of everything you thought you had under control. This person won't break down your defenses through force. They won't interrogate or pressure you to open up. No, it's far worse than that. They will simply stand in front of you and see you. Not the version you show to the world. Not the curated mystery you let people chase, but the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are. Even the parts you don't fully recognize yourself. Imagine this: a person walks into the room and suddenly you feel naked, not physically, but emotionally, as if every layer you've spent decades constructing is suddenly transparent. They don't need to ask questions because they already know. They don't need you to confess because they can feel it. And what's worse, you know that they know, and yet they don't flinch. They stay, they look deeper, they draw closer, and for the first time in your life, you won't want them to leave. That, Scorpio, is the detail that will terrify you more than betrayal, more than heartbreak, more than any abandonment you've suffered in the past. Because you're not afraid of being hurt. You've been hurt before, and you've survived. You're not afraid of losing someone. You've lost people before and managed to turn the pain into purpose. What you're truly afraid of is being fully known, of someone seeing your shadows and choosing to stay anyway. You've worn masks so well that you began to believe they were your face. You've played the game of power and detachment so convincingly that you forgot you were once someone who longed for genuine connection. But this person, this soul that the universe is sending you, will not be fooled by your performance. They won't be seduced by the stories you tell to deflect. They won't be scared away by your darkness. In fact, they'll be drawn to it, fascinated by it, made tender by it. And suddenly, everything you've used to keep people away will begin to backfire. You'll try to retreat into silence, and they'll lean in closer. You'll test them, provoke them, throw up emotional smokescreens, and they'll see right through it. You'll try to push them away just to see if they'll come back. And they will. And that's what will undo you. Because the scariest thing isn't rejection, it's unconditional presence. It's standing in front of someone with all your wounds exposed, all your contradictions laid bare, and hearing them say, "I'm not going anywhere." You won't know how to handle that at first. You'll panic. You'll try to regain control. You'll retreat behind your sarcasm, your mystery, your walls. But none of it will work, because this person wasn't sent to be impressed by your control. They were sent to teach you what it feels like to let it go. Somewhere deep inside you, beneath the pride, beneath the stoicism, beneath the warrior mask, there is a voice you've been ignoring. It's the voice that whispers late at night that you're tired, that you're lonely, that you're exhausted from pretending you don't care as much as you do. That voice is getting louder. And the reason this person is entering your life now is because you're finally ready to hear it. You might resist. You might tell yourself this isn't the right time, that you're too busy, that they're too intense, that it's too risky. But none of those excuses will hold, because your soul knows. Your soul recognizes this energy not as danger, but as the key you've been searching for without admitting it. The key that doesn't open someone else's heart, but yours. This isn't just another relationship. This isn't another test from the universe. This is the moment you either let yourself be seen or you continue hiding until the loneliness eats you from the inside out. And you've come too far to go back to that, too much now. Scorpio, the person who's coming will not complete you. You are already whole, but they will reflect back to you all the pieces you've locked away. They will remind you of who you were before the world taught you to close up, and they will love those pieces so fiercely, so fearlessly, that you won't be able to pretend they don't exist anymore. This is the beginning of your unraveling, and also your awakening. Are you ready to be seen, Scorpio? You've worn that mask so well, so convincingly that even you forgot it wasn't your real face. The one that tells the world, "I'm fine." The one that smiles without warmth, nods without surrender, and listens without ever letting anyone get too close. You crafted it piece by piece, layer by layer. In the quiet aftermaths of betrayal and disappointment, every time someone failed you, every time you had to rebuild from scratch, you forged a new piece of armor. And over time, it became second skin. But here's the thing about masks, they work until they don't. In the beginning, the mask gave you power. It made you untouchable. You could walk through the world with mystery in your eyes and silence in your mouth, and people would project their fantasies onto you, never realizing how little of the real you they were seeing. You learned how to read others like open books while staying a locked vault yourself. You mastered control. And you believed that was love's only safe route, never giving anyone the kind of access that could unravel you from within. But then they appeared, the person, the one the universe sent, and suddenly, your mask began to glitch. You didn't notice it at first. It was subtle. A moment here, a flicker there, those rare seconds when you almost said too much. When your voice cracked without permission. When you stared too long and forgot to keep your expression unreadable. It felt like static in your usual signal. An interruption in the script you've been reciting for years. You told yourself it was nothing, a temporary lapse. You'd regain control tomorrow, but the tomorrow never came. Because every time they looked at you, it felt like they were seeing through you, not past you. Not around you, but straight through the center of your soul. You could feel their eyes touching places inside you no one had ever reached. As if they carried a blueprint of your emotional architecture. You started to feel disarmed in their presence, not because they demanded it, but because your usual defenses simply stopped working. You tried to change the subject when things got too deep. They followed you. You joked to deflect. They didn't laugh. You turned the focus back onto them, hoping they'd get caught up in their own story. But somehow, it always circled back to you and not the curated version. But the version that trembled just beneath the surface, and you hated it. You hated how visible you were becoming, how every word felt like a risk, how every silence felt like exposure. You hadn't felt this naked in years, and worse, you hadn't felt this alive. There was a heat inside you. One you hadn't allowed to burn freely in a long time. Not passion, not desire, though those were there too, but something deeper. Longing. Longing to be real. Longing to be known. Longing to finally be able to take off the damn mask and breathe. But here's the tragedy, even as the mask began to crack, you kept trying to fix it. You went back to your old tactics, emotional detachment, silence, indifference. You tried to reassert control, to patch the leaks in your fortress. You pulled away when they got too close, hoping they'd take the hint. But they didn't. And not because they were naive, but because they weren't playing your game. They saw your pulling back for what it was, a test, a silent cry, will you still stay if I make it hard? And they did. They stayed when you shut down. They stayed when your words turned cold. They stayed when your mask twisted back into place. Not to rescue you, not to chase you, but to witness you, quietly, patiently, as if they knew without ever saying it that you would come back. Not to them, but to yourself. Because deep down, you knew it too. You were tired, not just of pretending, but of forgetting who you were before the world taught you to be so careful, so guarded, so perfectly unreadable. You miss the sound of your own unfiltered voice. You miss the freedom of being imperfect in front of someone and still being wanted. But the hardest thing about this person wasn't their gaze or their presence or even their persistence. It was the mirror they held up. The mirror that showed you just how much of your life has been lived in hiding, how much of your truth has been traded for safety, how many chances at real intimacy you've pushed away. Not because they weren't real, but because you weren't ready to be real with them. This person doesn't want to tear you down. Scorpio, that's what's so disorienting. They're not trying to dismantle you. They're simply offering a space where you don't have to keep dismantling yourself, where you can unmask, not out of weakness, but out of trust. And it terrifies you. Because if the mask no longer works, who are you? That is the question they bring. Not with words, but with presence. Not with pressure, but with permission. And if you're honest, that it's time to take it off. Time to remember what your own skin feels like without the weight of hiding. Time to let yourself be seen. Not because you're broken, but because you're finally ready to be whole. This isn't the end of your strength. Scorpio, it's the beginning of your freedom. The mask is slipping, and for the first time in a very long time, you don't want to fix it. By now, Scorpio, you already know you're in trouble. Not the kind of trouble that strikes like a lightning bolt, quick and clean and over in an instant. This is a slow burn reckoning. The kind that builds in silence, creeps into your routines, and curls its fingers around the parts of you you thought were untouchable. You know the feeling? That strange, disorienting panic that comes not from being pushed away, but from someone refusing to leave. You've tried everything in your arsenal, every old trick, every silent withdrawal, every feigned indifference, every calculated cold shoulder designed to send a message. I'm not available for this kind of closeness. You've reached into your playbook and performed the dances you know by heart how to pull just far enough that they chase, but not far enough that they stop caring. You've flooded the space with mystery and shadows, thinking that maybe, just maybe, they'll finally get the hint and go, but they don't. They stay. And that's when the fear begins to mutate into something else, something darker, something stickier, something far more dangerous than rejection. Addiction. You see, there's a part of you that aches every time they lean in. Not because it's painful, but because it's so unfamiliar. Their tenderness touches wounds that haven't been tended to in years. Wounds you forgot you even had, because they've been sealed under thick layers of survival. When they look at you, really look at you, it's like their eyes are peeling back those layers not to hurt you, but to heal you. And that is what makes you want to run. Because healing means feeling, and feeling means surrendering. And surrendering, for someone like you, has always been synonymous with danger, but something inside you has shifted. You don't just fear the depth of this connection, you're starting to crave it. You catch yourself replaying their words long after the conversation ends. You think about their silences, the weight of them, the way they made you feel more exposed than if they had spoken. You remember their eyes, not because they sparkled or seduced, but because they saw you, and that kind of seeing, pure, unwavering, non-judgmental, has become something you cannot unfeel. You've lived most of your life not needing anyone, or at least pretending you didn't. You've worn self-sufficiency like a crown. And to be fair, it has protected you from a lot. But now, when you find yourself thinking about them in quiet moments. When your chest tightens in that familiar ache you used to mistake for danger. You realize you don't just want them, you need them. And it terrifies you. Because this isn't lust. This isn't fantasy. This isn't someone you can push away with a well-timed withdrawal or distract yourself from with work or silence or other people. This is real. This is raw. This is messy and terrifying and dangerously tender. And you don't know how to handle that. Not really. You're used to being the one who holds the power, the one who reads everyone else like an open book while keeping your own pages sealed. But now the roles have reversed. They're the one reading you, feeling you, catching the cracks in your voice, watching the way you fidget when the truth gets too close. And for the first time in years, you're the one being studied. And you love it. And you hate it. And that contradiction is driving you mad. You want to open up, but you don't know how. You want to trust them. But there's a war going on inside you between the voice that whispers, maybe this is safe, and the one that screams you're going to get burned. You want to stay in their presence forever. And yet your every instinct is screaming for you to pull away before it's too late. This fear, it clings to you, but not like a threat. More like a shadow you've mistaken for protection. You've carried it so long. It feels like home. But now, in the presence of someone who doesn't fear your darkness, your fear starts to feel out of place. It begins to feel like the lie it is. Still, you keep testing them. You push, you withdraw, you go silent. You throw emotional grenades just to see what they'll do. Not because you want them to leave, but because you want them to stay. You want proof. You want evidence that someone could see the full weight of you, all your rage, all your need, all your longing, and still choose you. They see it, and they do. And with every test they pass, your fear grows, not because you don't trust them, but because you've never trusted yourself to let anyone this close without losing yourself. But here's the twist. Scorpio, what you're discovering now, in this strange collision between terror and desire, is that intimacy isn't the end of your freedom. It's the gateway to your rebirth. You're not becoming weaker because you need someone. You're becoming stronger because you're finally allowing yourself to be human. You're finally letting yourself be held. This addiction, the one that started as fear, has begun to feel like relief, not because they've promised to stay forever, but because they've never asked you to be anything less than everything you are. And that, Scorpio, is the kind of love you never dared to believe existed. The kind that sees your storms and doesn't seek shelter. The kind that looks at your chaos and sees poetry. The kind that knows you're afraid and still reaches for you anyway. You're not just afraid anymore. You're alive. And for the first time, you don't want to go back to sleep. Scorpio, you've always believed that the darker parts of you were burdens, that your intensity, your depth, your relentless emotional gravity were too much for most people to carry, let alone understand. So you hid them, you disguised your longings in silence, cloaked your fear of abandonment in pride, and camouflaged your aching need for connection behind sharp wit and emotional restraint. You told yourself, no one wants to love the part of me that shakes, that bleeds, that remembers. So you stopped showing it. And yet now, here you are face to face with someone who doesn't just notice your shadows, but leans into them. Someone who, instead of looking away when the light dims, draws closer. They don't flinch at your fury. They don't back away from your grief. They don't ask you to be easier to love. And in their presence, the part of you that has longed to be seen dares hesitantly to exhale. You expected judgment. You received presence. You braced for abandonment. You met patience. You feared being misunderstood. They listened harder. And slowly, achingly slowly, you begin to realize that what you thought were reasons to be unlovable are the very things they find most beautiful. They love your silence not because it's empty, but because they can hear what you're too scared to say. They love your unpredictability not because it's convenient, but because it means you feel everything with your whole being. They love your solitude not because it excludes them, but because it shows how sacred your inner world is. They don't just accept your darkness. They respect it. They honor it. They invite it. And that, Scorpio, changes everything. Because no one has ever stayed this long after seeing the rawness. No one has ever remained soft in the face of your rage. No one has ever touched your grief with hands that didn't flinch. You had always believed that love required negotiation, that for someone to stay, you'd have to shrink or polish or dilute yourself. But now you're beginning to feel something terrifying and holy all at once. You don't have to be easier to love, to be loved completely. The shadows within you, the ones you fought, suppressed, banished, are no longer enemies. Under this person's gaze, they are seen not as flaws, but as facets, parts of a mosaic, sacred ingredients in the alchemy of your soul. And they love them. Not in theory, not with pity, but with real, rooted devotion. The kind that doesn't ask you to change, the kind that says, I see all of you, and I'm still here, and it shakes you because you realize you don't know how to receive that kind of love. You don't know how to let someone stay after they've seen you cry and rage and pull away and come back again. You don't know how to believe that someone could cherish you not despite your complexity, but because of it. But they do. They love your layered mind, your haunted eyes, your silence that speaks volumes, your fire that sometimes burns too hot for your own skin. They love the version of you that collapses in the middle of the night, too tired to be strong. They love the version that spirals, then rebuilds. They love the parts of you that you thought you had to hide in order to be safe. And so, for the first time, you begin to make room for them, and for the possibility that love doesn't have to come at the cost of your truth. You let them see you without the performance. You cry without explanation. You speak without scripting. You feel without filtering, and it's terrifying. But it's also liberation, because every moment they stay, every time they look at you and do not turn away, you begin to rewrite the story you've told yourself for so long. The one that said no one could love you if they really knew you. The one that made you armor your heart and keep people just close enough to taste your light, but never your storm. That story is ending now, and a new one is being written, one where love doesn't demand that you shine brighter or feel less, but simply that you exist in all your mess, in all your brilliance, in all your truth. And Scorpio, you are finally starting to believe it. This isn't the kind of love you thought you wanted. It's the kind of love you didn't believe existed. It's not explosive. It's tectonic. It shifts you from the inside out. It moves the plates beneath your skin, and you are beginning to allow it in, shadow by shadow, moment by moment, heartbeat by heartbeat. You thought love meant being seen only in the light, but now you understand. Scorpio, you've spent your entire life believing that freedom meant control, that the only way to protect yourself from the chaos of love was to orchestrate every detail, monitor every opening, and retreat the moment you sensed the ground might shift beneath your feet. You told yourself that closeness was dangerous, that vulnerability was a trap, that anyone who truly saw you would either run away or worse, use your soul against you. But something changed, and not all at once. It happened quietly, like the sea reshaping the shore, day by day, moment by moment, in the presence of someone who never asked you to break apart but gently waited while you did. You began this journey with armor, with silence, with a long list of exit strategies. But now, when you reach for those old reflexes, They feel heavy, outdated, useless, because this person, this rare, soul-woven mirror, never tried to force their way in. They simply remained patient, grounded, still, and in their stillness, you felt your walls begin to crumble, not in panic, but in peace. And that, Scorpio, is the paradox that shatters everything you thought you knew. It wasn't control that kept you safe. It was connection. You thought power came from withholding, from being unreadable, from staying a mystery too complex to decode. But you've discovered a different kind of power now, the power of being fully seen and still fully loved. No edits, no masks, no hiding. And for someone like you, that is the most radical freedom of all. Because now, you no longer have to spend your nights calculating what you can show and what must stay buried. You no longer need to rehearse emotional responses or craft conversations with escape routes. You no longer fear the silence between words because you know they are listening even then. You've stopped waiting for them to leave. And more importantly, you've stopped trying to make them. You see, love didn't come to destroy you. It came to dismantle the illusion that you had to be invincible to be worthy of it. It came to show you that surrender is not collapse, that letting someone hold you isn't weakness, that the safest place isn't behind walls, it's in the arms of someone who sees your darkness and does not flinch. This is your freedom, not the kind that roars, the kind that exhales. It's waking up without fear. It's speaking without rehearsal. It's crying without apology. It's laughing without looking over your shoulder. And yes, there will still be days when you want to run, when old fears wrap around your ribs and whisper that you're safer alone. But you'll recognize them now, not as truth, but as echoes. And you'll know that you have the power to choose something else, something softer, something real. You will still be Scorpio intense, mysterious, layered. But now you will also be open, not to everyone, not without discernment, but to the one who earned their place, not by demanding it, but by staying even when it would have been easier to go. And maybe, just maybe, this time you'll stay too, because the version of you that lived in constant defense has served its purpose. It kept you alive. It got you through, but it's no longer who you are. You've evolved, you've unraveled, you've softened without breaking. And Scorpio, what a beautiful thing that is. You thought the scariest part of being loved would be losing yourself. But instead, you found yourself, and now you know the freedom you feared the most was the one your soul was always seeking. The end of the walls is not the end of you. It's the beginning of a life where you are free to be exactly who you are. No filter, no armor, no fear, just you, fully seen, fully chosen, fully loved.